Thank you, guys. Thank everybody for staying for this session. I'm privileged to have the opportunity to ask questions of these very intelligent gentlemen that are sat here with a wealth of experience in different areas. There is nobody behind you, Lee, honest. Just to introduce myself, I've got a long and checkered history in the IT industry. The grey hairs are starting to prove that. I started in line of business, then I became a developer, and I worked through the testing tools space into application performance management, and then into IT service management, and now analytics and APM with New Relic. I'm fortunate enough to spend my time speaking to customers about their problems, the benefits of solving those problems, and helping construct solutions using technologies like New Relic. So what I want to do today is just to pick the brains of these guys here and float a few questions at them. I'm conscious of the fact that those of you that have been in the sessions, you probably know who Declan is. He's very entertaining and has a full library of pictures of Michael O'Leary, I do believe. Faze was presenting earlier from Pivotal, okay, and you've just heard from Lee. But what I'd like to do is, first of all, give Harvey an opportunity to introduce himself from News UK, and then we'll move on to the questions.
Thank you. My name, as quite clearly said, was Harvey Shaw. My official title is Digital Services Manager with News UK. News UK is the front of a newspaper industry, predominantly known for. So we publish Times, The Times, Sunday Times, The Sun newspapers. We've branched out into a lot of other areas, bingo sites, betting sites, fantasy football sites across the board. And my responsibility is, and probably accountability, is to look after our digital estate. So currently we have about 160 services that are either public-facing or supporting of our public-facing websites, about 50 or so, of a variety of different flavors, from page 3 to the Times. We have a variety of different apps, tablet editions, mobile editions, etc. like that. We run a lot of microservices across a variety of different platforms, and recently moved the Sun website over to WordPress. So we have a lot of flavors, a lot of fingers and a lot of pies at the moment.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I'm going to pick on you again, the first question directed to you. The theme of this session was that every business is a software business, and a lot of the presentations we've had so far have talked about how you operate as a software business, regardless of what your industry is. And the media industry, you could argue, for a long time has been a software business. It wouldn't run without software.
True.
But I think the difference now is with digital channels, that software is in the hands of the consumers. Mm-hmm. So how has that changed the way that you operate as an organization in terms of delivering your service?
Digital revolution has dramatically and fundamentally changed the news industry, not just for us, but for pretty much our competitors as well. Unbelievably so. As I said, you know, we're known to be a newspaper producing company, and the thing with the newspaper is you don't know whether a user is reading a particular story on page 5 or not. Digital revolution has allowed us to been able to hone in on our customer needs. We've needed to be heavily involved in the digital industry. I suppose since Generation Y came along, we've noticed that across the industry that readership of newspapers is drastically going down. Sun newspaper used to 4.5 million papers a day. It's around about 1.6 now. So we've had to identify with our customers again and push out into the industry. New Relic's is a strong enabler on that. The ability to understand where our users are at any particular point in time, what our users are clicking on, whether our page views are up or down, what page is trending, is driving our news floor at the moment. Trying to understand dynamically whether a story is going to be successful or not. Everything that we're doing at the present time is all about data collection. It's all about trying to understand what our customers want, trying to deliver fast, innovative systems. And we've moved everything, pretty much 99.9% of my estate is all sitting now on AWS. And we're able to dynamically scale to fit demand. You talked about spikes in traffic. On Friday night, for example, Harry Kane, who plays for Spurs, scored 4 goals, and we went from about 50 users to 120,000 users on the Dream Team app within about 2 minutes. So to be able to quickly scale to meet that demand and then scale back down again is hugely important for us. So.
Thank you. Anybody else got a view on how the digital channel is changing the way that you have to operate?
So I talked earlier about some of the different industries that we work with, but specifically on media, exactly as you were saying, Harvey, in terms of newspapers, we're seeing that playing out in all other kinds of media as well. With this whole move towards digital disruption, you've got cloud-native, software-based companies who are setting up business, and they're providing media consumption in new ways and in more convenient formats, right? Think about in your own lives, think about how you consume media and how that has changed, right? We're no longer necessarily spending the majority of our time sitting in front of a large screen TV at home. That's not the primary way that we consume media, right? We're consuming media on the go. We have offline viewing apps. We have BBC iPlayer and other similar apps from all the broadcasters. So Pivotal, in some sense, gets to work on both sides of the coin, both with the digital disruptors as well as with the established media companies to help them to be more competitive. And what I'd say is everybody's kind of trying to deliver a better digital experience. That's a common theme that we've heard throughout today. Everybody's trying to deliver a better digital experience by building these new types of dynamic applications, as you call them, Lee, which allow you to consume media in new ways. Because the problem that you've got is if you're a media company, you have all this content. You're basically a content company. You're producing media. But how do you get consumers, how do you get users to consume your content? Because you've got more than they could consume. So if you think about, for example, Netflix, hundreds of thousands of titles, your biggest problem is figuring out what to watch next. Right? And I think to tie into some of the earlier themes we talked about today, the ability to be able to get metrics and data around viewing habits and what do people like to watch so that you can come up with, one way you can deliver a better digital experience is by providing recommendations about, if you like program X, you're going to like program Y. Because that obviously means that you're going to drive greater consumption of your data, greater consumption of your media content. And,
yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, and the spikiness of the traffic is just as bad in that environment as it is in the newspaper, et cetera.
Yep.
And especially when you start talking about live events, right?
Absolutely.
And you start talking about sporting events and things like that, and the spikiness of that. The Game 7 of the United States World Series baseball was a good example of that, and there's those sorts of examples all over the place as well.
There's one recent one actually, which is probably going to be relevant to the audience here in the UK, which is the comic relief Red Nose Day, which I think is coming up in the US pretty soon. But that's another great example of a charity who does 99% of their fundraising on one day of the year.
Yeah.
Right? And this year they raised £73 million in a 7-hour window. So you can just imagine, what their cost of downtime would have been if they even had minutes or seconds of downtime, how many transactions they would have lost. And I think that's another great use case. You were talking about dynamic cloud and dynamic applications, and it was interesting the approach they took was a multi-cloud approach, right? So rather than put all their eggs in one basket with one cloud provider, which, although unlikely, you could have a cloud provider failure, it does happen. So they've actually built their application in a way that it will span across multiple clouds and load balance across them and try and remediate against resiliency issues that way as well.
How many, if I could throw...
Could we just
sure,
let Declan get a word with me? Because we don't have long on the stage, and so I've still got 100 questions to go. So if we could let Declan have a go.
It's actually been about every business as a software business. I joined Ryanair as a systems manager 5 years ago, so I joined an airline 5 years ago. The name is still the same over the door, but I'm now working for a software services firm. And O'Leary has said before that we used to be an airline with a website, and now we are a website with an airline hanging at the back instead. So we're changing utterly. We are chasing after the disruptors in the travel software industry to try and chase after the Booking.com or the car trawlers or Hertz or whoever, most of the aggregators, to try and kill them off. And that's what our software services business is going to be. And New Relic is coming into it to allow us to monitor everything that we're doing now. But as we start selling that software to other people, and if we start, God help me, but if we start running that software for them, I'm going to need to be able to monitor that and maintain that as well for them.
Okay. Hopefully we'll be there for you. So that actually leads on to the next question, really, which is you were talking about going after the disruptors in the market, and Ian Messingham earlier today talked about cloud being the new norm, and Faze, you talked about enterprises becoming cloud native. The conversations I have with customers, I always ask them who do they aspire to be like, and it doesn't really matter who they are. They all want to be like Uber or Airbnb or Amazon or whatever. So, what would be the one thing, and just one thing, that you would say is the lesson that they should take from the experiences of those in taking what is potentially a large legacy organization and leapfrogging all of the mistakes that those organizations have made in the past?
I think probably the one thing I'd say around that is, the bigger opportunity around cloud is not so much around the lift and shift discussion about closing data centers and outsourcing it to somebody else. The cloud basically opens up new opportunities for you to do new things in new ways. And what I mean by that is when you look at the scale of the public cloud providers, AWS, Google, Azure in particular, the cost of computing, the cost of storage is just reducing all the time. And what that means is you have the opportunity to solve new problems that you never imagined you could solve before. And that's really what the cloud native companies are doing. That's what the likes of an Uber and Airbnb and companies of that ilk, they're reimagining the experience that they can go out to customers with. And I'd say that's probably my main recommendation for everybody in the room is, think about your own customers and think about how you can disrupt yourself before somebody else might disrupt you.
Yeah. So think about the user experience, the digital experience, rather than your business.
Yeah.
Right. And so what experience are you trying to deliver? And then work backwards from there, I think, which was something we saw on one of the earlier presentations.
Absolutely.
Work back from the user
it's that
experience.
focus on those dynamic applications, as you call them, Lee, or cloud native applications, as I refer to them, and the experiences that you provide through that.
Okay. So I'm about to open a real can of worms here, and I'm going to drag this one at you, Lee. We looked at. We considered servers to be pets, right? Okay, so we used to keep a list of server names in spreadsheets, right? And they had friendly names, and then virtual machines became cattle, right? And containers are bees, potentially. Serverless computing, functions, what is it, bacteria? Something like that, I don't know. But in that very dynamic world where something is there 1 second and gone the next, where do you see the future of the CMDB coming from an ITIL perspective? Because we've had conversations about ITIL and DevOps and how do they coexist. Where do you see the future of the CMDB?
Boy, I just don't see ITIL and those concepts playing in this world the way they used to. It just isn't relevant anymore. It's DevOps. I don't like the term DevOps. We've talked about this. I don't like the term DevOps either because it implies a role versus a cultural transformation, which is really what DevOps is all about. And I think the same thing's true with serverless and with the dynamic cloud. It's not a thing that you do. It's a cultural innovation you put in place. So I think those ITIL and ITIL-based terms just don't apply anymore. And And it is a completely different world with a completely different set of requirements and a completely different way of thinking about how you build your applications. And that's why a lot of industries do get leapfrogged, and that's why the companies that don't get leapfrogged and are taking advantage of these capabilities and are able to make the cultural transformation to make that happen. So I think just those old ways of doing things just don't apply anymore at all.
We, part of our journey over the last few years, we've switched from waterfall development to agile, and we tried to do DevOps. Yeah. So we're restarting our efforts again this year. We made a mess of DevOps the first time around. We ended up with another silo, which is the whole point of DevOps, is to get rid of the silo of Dev and Ops. We had a silo of DevOps in the middle, which was of no benefit to anybody. So it is all about the culture, and it's nothing to, we fell into the trap of thinking DevOps was tooling. DevOps isn't tooling, they're just a means to an end. It's the culture, and we got the culture badly wrong for a while. We've restarted it again now, and I'm not sure whose presentation it was, talking about the site reliability engineers embedded in the Scrum teams. We're starting that now. We're 2 years late, but we're starting it again now to try and get it right. We have all the tooling in place that we could ever use, but that wasn't DevOps. That was really a little small little piece of it.
I think it's a very good point you make about it being a mindset and a culture. And without that, you know, you're never going to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you said, I think we're quite fortunate in that one of the key things that we do with clients is to bring about that change in mindset and that change in behavior in some of the largest enterprises that are around. And some of these have been going for like 50 years or 100 years. So it's so hard for them to make that cultural transformation, as you said, you know, taking a tooling-led approach to these types of transformational issues, you know, that it's not effective. You've got to live and breathe and immerse yourself and reprogram the way you think about things. So as you were saying, you know, to ask your question about ITIL versus DevOps, you know, it's just approaching the problem from a different perspective. You know, ITIL was about minimizing change because change was bad, right? Anytime you made a change, there's a potential for something to go wrong. Whereas in the world that we live in now with cloud-native organizations and digital natives, you know, change is good because the quicker you can make changes, the less of a big deal it is, right? If you make a change and it doesn't work, it's very easy to back out of that, right? And that's an approach where you know, ITIL isn't compatible with that.
And you can make course corrections as well.
Yeah. There's a place for both, though.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
In our business, we've got a split brain. Half the company is running at web speed. So DevOps and Agile and everything else is all in there. But half the company is an airline, and airlines don't move very fast, and they need ITIL processes to make their changes safe for airline safe.
Yeah,
so
there isn't a one-size-fits-all. I think you're absolutely right about that, because there are systems that you have in your organization, as I'm sure everybody has in the audience, where the pace of change isn't that high, and you don't need to do agile development and iterative development for every single app that you develop, right? The ones which are more stable, which are more systems of record, which don't have a high pace of change, which aren't customer-facing, ITIL absolutely still has a role to play there. But I think where there is a competitive pressure, where there is a time-to-market issue, where you do need to get innovative new capabilities out to your users at a much faster pace, ITIL doesn't work for those types of scenarios, and you need a more agile approach. Okay.
So ITIL still has a huge place, and the likes of service design, incident management, problem management, change management, they underpin your DevOps culture. Yep. They will underpin that. To quote, I think it's the Agile Cookbook, because it says basically Agile should be just enough. I think that is the trick when it comes to applying an ITIL process into a potential DevOps culture, is you don't want to have a dev team bulked down by having to fill out change records, etc. It's automate, automate, automate. There's no reason why it can't be done in that manner, but still underpinning that whole service.
Yeah, I did hear the term a few years back, it was water scrumful was a methodology. But we've only got just over a minute left, so this is your opportunity basically to come up with what you'd like to see from New Relic moving forward to support you. We already understand that, Declan, that you want the color to be fixed to the metric.
It's the little things that like.
Yeah, but you know, how can we help you very, very quickly in addressing the challenges that you're facing now and tomorrow?
Keep adding more innovative add-ons or products into the same core suite to keep giving us the same value for money we're getting now. Ryanair is all about value. So we have to keep getting that value, and that value comes from you adding in more features and more options into the existing product set.
Okay. Harvey, do you?
For me personally, and I think most of New Relic know this of your management stream, is basically heavily invest into your synthetics. Synthetics has got so much more value than what you're investing into it. Let me dictate or tether the download speed. Let me dictate whether it's trying to mimic a phone, etc. like that. You know, we're moving into a mobile first, and not have mobile a tick box that says make this an iPhone 6 connection. Is a huge undersight at the moment, in my opinion.
You've had your stage. The product managers are here.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure
I've got a meeting tomorrow
notes
with your product managers just to really have a go at them.
Unfortunately, we've just run out of time. I could have spent a lot longer up here talking to you guys. I really appreciate you coming up and giving us your views, but unfortunately, we need to hand over to the next session. Glenn, would you like to? Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.